Morning everybody, and welcome aboard once more for another wonderful sunrise safari. You are watching Safari Live and we are in Djuma in the greater Kruger National Park in South Africa. It's a very wet morning. We've had a lot of rain over the night and well, it's quite cool here this morning. And my name is Ralph Kirsten, and on the camera we've got Senzo. How's it, Senzo? Now please don't forget to join us on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and on the YouTube live chat. Send us your questions and your comments and join us on the largest game drive in the world. Now this morning, as I've said, very wet. It's about 19 degrees Celsius, about that 60 to 63 degrees Fahrenheit, so rather cool, rather wet. We've got every opportunity that the predators may be out active after that rainy evening, and they might all be walking on the roads as well, because with all the grass being very wet, a little bit uncomfortable walking in the thick stuff, so they might be out on the road. So I'm hoping for that. Now, we've got Taylor out on the vehicle, and we've also got Steve. I think he might be in the tent for now, with the rain being around, but if it clears up a little bit, maybe he'll be out on foot as well. Now, I'm going to be heading back towards Vuyatela access area, a little bit of the central zone, which I'm going to be working. But while I start up and head over there, let's head over to Taylor and see what her plans are for the morning.
Good morning on this very gloomy, ominous day. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and on camera with me today is Biomes, and we are also searching for animals. Yay! Hopefully we'll find some, seeing as though all the wonderful rain has washed everything away. Now, I spoke to Mr. Henry this morning to give me some sort of idea where he lost Hosanna last night, who was apparently on a little humble. So, what is that? Oh, it's a scrub hare. Never mind, I got excited and I was like, no, surely that can't be a blue daker. We don't get them up here. Wait, I'm going to blind Ari. Okay, Ari's just come from this way, so I'm going to reverse, because there are lots of other people on safari, and I'm going to go this way. Good morning. And then Ari's going to go over the dam wall. Now, for those of you that were watching the dam cam last night, you would have seen all the rain. You would have heard the thunder, perhaps even a little bit of a lightning show. Well, that's what I could see from my window. It was lovely, wasn't it? Except for the fact that I think it woke the entire camp up at about 1:30. So I hope everybody managed to get back to sleep. Otherwise, it would have been a very short night. So, with all the rain that we've had, it's exciting, because I know everybody loves to see millipedes and African land snails, right? Hey? And slugs. There's always the possibility for those creatures. Otherwise, I don't really know what else we're going to find today. It's going to be increasingly difficult to, of course, see anything that, well, was moving after 10 o'clock last night. Their tracks would have been washed away. I don't really know how much rain there is, but the ground is a bit slushy. I think this is hyena. Lots of hyena tracks. Even the hyena tracks, their toes are sort of all splayed in the mud at the moment. You know what? Let's just do a little sneak here past the camp, because we know Hosanna absolutely loves it in the camp. What's that? There's a bird. I don't know if we can get it, Vim. There's a raptor up over there. There's something in the tree, and then just to the left, if you pan your other left, there we go. Who have we got? A gymnogene, a very damp gymnogene up in the tree, already out, trying to dry its feathers off, making the most of the early morning. It's not cold today. All the hot air has been trapped in by the thick layer of clouds, so very nice. At least we got to see some birds. And of course, as most of you know, after a bit of birding, after a bit of rain, it's great to do some birding, because they are going to come out and dry their feathers. And sitting in a marula tree. Not quite ready to jump around from branch to branch. Is it a marula tree? No, it might actually be a knobthorn or something. I don't know, I can't see. Everything all looks the same at the moment. Grey and miserable. But now that the rain has let up, perhaps some of the creatures that were tucked away underneath the shrubs will will potentially come out and get going with their day. A big stretch with those very nimble legs that the African Harrier hawk has. Clutching its feet together, now showing us how great they are at balancing. Right here. Very nice. Let's go across to Steve. He's also out this morning, not on bushwalk. He's in the tent, but he's not inside the tent.
We're not inside at the moment, but we are out trying to find all sorts of wonderful things to show you inside the tent. And welcome again. My name is Steve Falconbridge. I'm joined on camera by Davisito, otherwise known as David. And we are out. We're inside the tent. It is an overcast, drizzly day. It's very wet underfoot. You can see my feet just from walking 20 meters into the bushes there. I have got very wet feet. So it is not a good day for walking, and it is probably not a good day for driving off-road either, because we could cause some irreparable damage. But we are going to stay in the tent and be very, very sustainable and show you all sorts of wonderful things inside and around. And please send through your questions to #SafariLive. Dave and I in the tent, as Taylor said, it's not that cold. I've just put this jacket on again just to keep myself at that sort of level. We've got coffee, we've got books, we've got the internet, so let's see what amazing things we can provide for you this morning. So first of all, I have found a very interesting piece of lichen. I know I've spoken about lichen before, but every time I find a new one, it is absolutely marvelous. So if we can go, I think it is, yes, Bex, if we can go to the microscope, that would be marvelous. Oh, I did have the writing off before, and there we go. We've rebooted. We've got everything out the way. Look at that. Is that not some really marvelously crazy looking thing? Now, that is a living organism, ladies and gentlemen, made up of bacteria and fungi living in symbiosis. And the reason why it's looking so sort of weird this morning is because of the moisture. And the last time we looked at the lichen, it had dehydrated, which is what they do in the dry times. And now we're looking at lichen that is actively photosynthesizing and taking in moisture from the atmosphere, taking in nitrogen from the atmosphere, absorbing the moisture through the sort of the outer skin, you could call it. And it looks like something out of an alien movie, does it not? Now, I'm just going to move this over again to show you another piece of this stick. And that is on the stick itself. Let me just get it a bit centered for you. Other way. Isn't that just ridiculously weird? Reptilian research. This almost looks reptilian. You think it's amazing. It is incredible. And that is the difference between lichen when it's dry versus lichen when it's actively doing its thing. And lichen doesn't need rain to act like this. It's able to take in its moisture sort of in the evenings of dew, of condensation, and then as the day comes around, it will slowly sort of dehydrate again and wither away. It actually looks dead, but it's actually just gone into sort of a dormant stage. But we're looking at some, I actually cut this off of a living branch, so it's outside doing its thing, complete harmony with its own surroundings and nature. I think it's absolutely marvelous. And you can see how it's slowly growing and growing and getting more and more onto that wood itself. Some really, really strange looking things inside the lichen, but that is the benefit we have of it being in the tent, is we get to see these really cool things, and we're going to keep walking around and finding some fantastic stuff to talk about. And while we do it, let's see where Ralph is, if he's managed to get to Vuatela Dam.
Thanks, Stevie boy. And well, everybody, I've just come back to that area where we had Shudulu yesterday, and this was where she went into this block in the hopes that, you know, possibly she's returned from her wanderings to Simbambili. But it seems that we're not lucky just for the minute. But remember that perseverance pays off. Kristen, thanks for your question. And well, there are a few animals that love the rainy, wet weather. As you might see, when we're driving along, I need to be very careful now when the roads are wet. Not only because it's all slippery and I might slide all over the place and hopefully not throw Senzo out the back of the vehicle, but there is all sorts of creatures that start popping out when it's wet like this. One of them being the African giant land snail, who needs it to be a little bit moist like this, and he will then exit out of his burrow or where he's dug himself into the ground. And there's a couple of other creatures as well. Obviously lots of froggies that start jumping around all over the place. So we had one jump across the road just in front of us a minute ago, but one of my favorite little frogs is the bushveld rain frog, who literally buries itself under the sand, and it only exits when it feels that bit of moisture starting to trickle through to it where it has buried itself. Very similar to that of the African giant land snail. So these kind of creatures now really enjoy and exit their estivation or hibernation underneath the ground at this particular time. So they're the ones that love it. When you see the cats in this type of weather, they can look a little bit miserable at times, but they just literally sit it out, and there's not really that much they can do. So, you know, but on the other hand, predators, especially lions, with such a high heart rate, it's a lot cooler at the moment. So I think they would almost prefer it being very wet than very, very hot. Now, I'm going to continue on here on the leopard search, on the predator prowl. And speaking of predators, let's send you on over to Taylor with a very mangy looking thing.
Oh, I feel so sorry for this little jackal. We've been watching this particular jackal for a long time now, at least a year, and normally sort of hangs around near the airstrip and quite close to the lodge. Now, on a very rainy, miserable day like today, you can imagine that this thing must be freezing, and I do feel so sad for it. It's lost all its hair now. I don't think that it will live for too much longer. It's just been deteriorating over time. Now, for those of you that don't know what mange is basically, I suppose, a type of a mite that feeds on the hair follicles of animals. And it's not necessarily a very quick process. If you let me go a little bit forward. We won't stay too long with this little jackal. It doesn't mind the vehicles at all. I just feel very sad for it. And as we come into winter, I don't think that this jackal is going to last. It's looking very thin. I would imagine that it's predominantly feeding on fruit at the moment, because the guarri berries, well, there are guarri berries. The brown ivories were dropping fruit, and soon some of the jackalberry trees should start dropping fruit too. And that's the one incredible thing about a jackal's diet, is that it is able to change according to seasons. So when there are plenty rodents around, and when there's a carcass to scavenge on or a scrub hare to catch, that's of course their preferred diet. But in those moments when those animals are not around, they can quite happily feed on fruit, which is why we know the jackalberry tree is called a jackalberry tree, because the seeds are often found in their dung. And down in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, they love to eat the common apple, the common star apple, which is also part of the Diospyros family. Granny pig, I'm also really surprised that this little thing is still alive. I can't even remember if it was a side-striped jackal or a black-backed jackal, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't really resemble either of them at the moment. It looks more like a whippet, which is the type of a dog, in my opinion. But, of course, it's not. It's just we've seen it over time. You can see it itchy, just scratching every now and then. And it's going to have to wait until, I suppose, the sun comes out for it to dry and to sort of warm up. But it is very, very, very sad. Now, if you are wondering why we don't intervene and why we don't try and help this jackal, it's because mange is a natural thing out here. We've seen the Styx pride, which is a pride of lions that have lost many, many cubs. They've lost entire litters. I'll never forget when I first started here. I think they lost a litter of about 8. It was about 8, Heavium. Something like it was a large amount of cubs. They almost had psychoptic mange, though. It was quite severe. Whether this little one has got psychoptic mange, I'm not so sure, because I don't see, there's a bit of scabbing, but it's not crazy sort of all over its body. So I think it was maybe just mange that has eventually sort of just deteriorated the health of this jackal. Yes, Ginger, you're quite right. It is contagious. So I have not seen this jackal with anyone else. To be honest, I think it's been ostracized. Animals can be cruel too. I don't think other jackals would really want anything to do with it. Also, I can't imagine that it has a mate out here. It's very unwell. I don't think mating would be on the cards. Oh, did it have? Really? I never saw the partner. VM is just saying that it had a partner, so perhaps the partner has already died from the same thing, and now this one is on its way out. I only ever saw one, but of course VM has been working here for a very long time. So we know jackals are monogamous, so it would have definitely spread it from his partner, whether its partner had it first and gave it to it. But normally after rain they can recover, but I think this is very far gone. I'll be very surprised if a jackal would would come back from something like this. So like I said, it's not our place to intervene here. Some animals can overcome it, some can't. Now, Jessica, I don't know if mange lives in soil, in fact. Possibly. I actually haven't got a clue, so I'll have to do a bit of research on that. Maybe Ralph or Steve. Steve has got the Google machine right there. Maybe he doesn't even need the Google machine. He can perhaps just answer it. Otherwise, if not, there we go. We can help Steve out with some content today. All the questions we can't answer, we can send towards his way. It's always quite nice. Sometimes being in the tent, you can pull up research documents right there and then. Very cool. Well, I think we're going to leave this jackal alone. Like I said, it's not really bothered with us at all, but I just don't think we need to sit here and watch it for 2 hours. So we're going to go look for something that's a little bit healthier. Off we go to Steve in his tent. I bet he's going to get quite hot in a while.
Yes, we don't have mange in the tent, and I will do a little search shortly to find out your questions. You didn't give me too much time to get on there, but we have found ourselves a beautiful moth, and the moth is under the microscope, and he is indeed very, very wet. So we're going to jump over to the microscope, have a little look at this little fellow. He's quite furry, and you can see the water droplets. He's actually got a water droplet, I don't know if it's a he or she, but on the eye. If you look right in the bottom left of the screen, there's a water droplet there, and there's also some on the body. I managed to just grab it off of the branch, off of one of the grass stalks outside. I was obviously very gentle. It is alive. It's been moving around, but it's relatively cool in the morning, and we don't get these creatures really flying around until, well, first of all, they've shedded off the load of water that their body seems to have stored, and then they dry out a bit, and then the heat will warm them up as well. All insects are ectothermic, so they need warmer temperatures around to be more mobile. So as I said last time in the tent, this is a great time of day to be looking at these beautiful little critters. And isn't that a beautiful creature? It's right on the edge of my little plastic Tupperware, so I can't get any more on the antennae. But those eyes are just they're just mesmerizing. And it looks like the body is covered in a layer of down feathers. Yes, Patricia, it looks like she's wearing a very big fur coat, doesn't it? And I've never looked at a butterfly underneath the microscope before, but we do know that moths are a little bit more sort of furry or, sort of hairy, seemingly, where the butterflies seem to lack that same sort of furness. And the antennae also on butterflies are clubbed, whereas those of the moths don't seem to be clubbed. They're just sort of little stalks that stick out there. Yes, Patrick, there is indeed, on the eye, bottom left of the screen. That's the first thing I mentioned. There's drops all over the place, and that just goes to show how small this little creature is, that they are small little drops actually adhered to the body. It's only about a couple centimeters in size. Very scraggly looking moth. The colors you see on the microscope are browns and sort of reddish auburn colors. I mean, to the naked eye, it just looks like a little dull white color. So quite marvelous that we're able to actually see all of these. I'm just going to move it over a little bit, see if we can get those antennae. Oh, there they are. Ooh. See how they're like long stalks. I've got focus on the right one. The left one is a little bit out of focus, but we'll leave it like that for now. Poor little fella is just trying to warm up in the morning. What is that noise, Dave? there is elephants making a very loud noise behind us there. Should we have a little walk out there, Dave? Have we got enough cable? I'll just pull some cable for you there. Okay. Let's just have a little listen. We heard some really strange noises. Don't worry, folks. We're perfectly safe here by the tent. I'm not sure if that was elephants or if that is the Impala rutting, but it was a very strange noise coming from the distance. Granny Peg is very exciting indeed. It's not that close, but as we heard that, Dave and I both were like, what is that? Problem is when I have this earpiece in, you don't always get the right sort of... Sounds like something is dying, in fact. I wonder, Bex, if you want to talk to Ralph, if he's nearby, go and look around sort of Rebecca's, Zoe's area. Something is going on over there that is not kosher, or could be quite entertaining. Very strange. Now, you might wonder if an animal has been caught. Quite often they make this bellow, this death bellow sound, and there's been a lot of hypotheses behind why make this death bellow. And essentially what happens is that an animal gets caught, and they make this, that was a very good buffalo dying sound, they make this really weird sound, and quite often you'll actually see other animals will come and have a look and not do anything about it. In the case of buffalo, quite often they can chase off the predator, but in Jackal, Impala, nothing happens with regards to their friends. Their friends and family kind of like, okay, cool, the lions are busy, we're going to just watch. So that is not any reason. Another thing is some people think that maybe the noise is to scare off the predator, but we've seen that time and time again it doesn't actually scare them off. And then the third hypothesis is that noise, we heard it, we've got okay hearing, that noise attracts a predator, and 7 times out of 10, that noise will actually bring a predator in, a hyena, another leopard, another lion, and it could potentially chase that predator off and give that thing an ability to sort of escape. So that is the purpose and the hypotheses behind the death bellow. Well, it looks like Ralph has made his way into that area. Let's see if he can pick up on that sounds that's coming from the bush.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for the update. That's brilliant. So we've got something to work towards. Maybe there's something happening in that area that Steve has mentioned. So we're coming up along Philemon's cut line, which leads towards Rebecca's and then up towards Quarantine, which is still that central part of the concession that I've been talking about. And that's right next to camp, so not far from where we actually all sleep at night. And yes, last night we obviously didn't hear too much around camp because of all the rain that was happening. So it's been quiet for us in that sense. We didn't know really which direction to go. You know, very often in the morning, now I get up at 4 in the morning and I sit and have my coffee, and you can often hear hyena calling every now and then, the rasp of a leopard, you know, doing that sawing like they do. It sounds like somebody sawing a tree, and lions calling, and then you sort of get an idea of direction, where to go looking. Obviously this morning it was just a bit of a hit out where, you know, take your chances and just do a bit of a grid search. But now we've got something to work towards, with Steve having heard some noises there. So I'll head in that direction, and with Taylor being off down near to Chitwa, it's good that I'm working this particular region here. And so I've come from the sort of north-western section of the park, working the central side, and Taylor down in the southeastern side. So we're pretty much working the whole place, but that's not to say, as I drive through here, 3 seconds later, a leopard pops out on the road behind us, which can quite easily happen. And is exactly what happened yesterday evening with Shudulu, because we were sitting watching those Impala and the warthog, and we drove off, and literally 3 minutes later I had on the radio that one of the landowners had found Shudulu, and I asked him where he was, and he said, and he explained that spot, the sandy patch, And I said, near to those Impala and the warthogs? And he said, absolutely, just across the road from them. So I was like, wow, we must have just missed her. Anyway, we had that wonderful sighting with her yesterday afternoon. So it seems she's either lying in the grass somewhere and we didn't spot her, or she has continued on her way into Simbabili. But I'm going to get a little bit of speed now, because I don't want to miss out on this opportunity that Steve has now presented to me. Now we hit on to Rebecca's, and we'll get into the area and then we'll switch the vehicle off and see if we can also hear the calls. I'm thinking, I don't quite know what noises Steve has heard. It sounded, he said, squealing like an elephant, and then maybe an Impala rutting. So, and then he said maybe an animal dying. So he's gone through quite a range of different things there. I'm hoping it might be a leopard that's grabbed something, but and maybe a little warthog. Maybe a leopard with a warthog. Let's hope for that. Hold thumbs. Well, putting your fingers crossed, holding thumbs. Not too far, just around the corner now. We're coming up here to Philemon's Dip, and then we'll head towards. I think I'm just going to pop in around here and just zoot down this road, and then once we get down through the dip, I'm going to switch off and listen. We might just listen from here a little bit, actually. Just see if we can pick anything up. Okay, we've got grey hornbills calling. A lot of birds calling, but no animal sounds for now. Do you hear anything, Zenzo? Zenzo says no. Right, let's carry on. Let's get a little bit closer to where Steve was. It's always very exciting when somebody's heard something. Okay, everyone, while I try and track down the source of this sound, let's head on over to Taylor and see how it's going over on Chitwa.
All I heard is that Ralph is going to be tracking down a saucy sound. Of course, I know he didn't say that, but I had a little giggle in my head. Boy. Right, so what we're doing is we're just having a little check around here on the sort of southern boundary of Chitwa. I'm going to turn in off to the left now. I'm just going to have a little scratch around. It looks like one of the Nkoro vehicles have already driven here. But because it's, well, the clouds have only just started to lift now, there is a chance that, well, the cats, when we're trying to keep out of the rain, if they were trying to keep out of the rain, they don't seem to mind it too much, might be on the move again. So it's not a bad thing to check the same roads once or twice more. And just to have a look, I think I've told you the story about how once we were looking for lions down in the Eastern Cape, and the vegetation is like the thickest area you can find in the Sabi sands times 10. So it's exceptionally dense, and we drove around this area because we knew the lions were somewhere there. I don't know, I think every guide on the property had driven that road, so it had been driven about 20 times, and on about the 4th time I had driven the one route, a lioness popped out. So you never really know who's going to be on the move. You could just be missing the animals all the time. Although it seems to be quite quiet in the east. There's been no reports of any lion tracks, so I wonder where the Styx Pride are. And they must be a little bit further south. The Torchwood Pride have obviously headed back to their normal areas around Torchwood, Buffelshoek, and sort of a little bit further east in Coral, Cheetah Plains, sort of into Kruger. There were reports, however, on a net of a duiker kill up in a tree, but no leopard in sight. Unfortunately, we can't traverse on a net, so I'm not sure who it is. They don't know who it is either. They can't see any leopard tracks because of, well, the rain. So So they're going to be going and inspecting around that area a little bit later and hope to find whoever's made a kill back on their kill. So we'll get that update from the guys in the east. So we'll make our way around. We'll check Kuchava, who's a female leopard with a young cub. We'll check her favorite spots, and if we don't find anything here, we're probably going to head back on to Djuma. We'll do that and then have a little scratch around. We'll check up Cheetah Cut Line and see if Tundi hasn't come back. Okay, anyways, let's go back to Steve, who's I think playing around with the microscope and looking at droplets.
I am. I have found a little bit of water. I was asked if I could put some water underneath the microscope, but we're not getting to see too much. Really, we're seeing some interesting... Jared's buddy, you wanted to see some water? Well, I've grabbed some water that was in one of the containers, and we're going to have a look at it. But to answer Taylor's question about the mange can apparently live in the soil and in contaminated environments, and millions of little mites can live in a little square meter of soil. So, and we can actually get it from our pets. We can get it from cats or dogs that have mange, but it is quite treatable if you just have to use the right product. So don't worry if you do get mange. You will be okay. But what we do see in mange is we generally see mange happen to animals that have poor condition. That's the same as tick infestations, mite infestations, which is essentially mange. Happens to an animal that's condition is quite low. And when your condition's low, just like when you have antibiotics or we're feeling quite ill, it's quite often that we get more ill from all sorts of other things because your body is not able to fight all of these afflictions that are happening to you. So I hope that answers your question. So we have got a little bit of water under the microscope. I'm not quite sure what we're looking at, but there it is. There it is. We've got some water, and I can move it around. The brown stuff is actually underneath the container. I've been trying to sort of clean it off, but you can see the moisture moving around. There are little bits of things inside the water as well. So I don't know if anybody's ever looked at water before on a microscope, but there's all sorts of things moving around in there, but I don't know if I'll drink it. No, it's actually just the pixels on the screen that seem to be moving. But water is a living source, and you often find all sorts of things living inside. I don't know if we have the right magnification to be able to see what's going on. But that is it, Jared's buddy. I hope that answers a little bit of what you wanted to see. Yeah, so I'm not sure how far Ralph is now. We haven't heard anything more. It definitely doesn't seem to be an impala rutting. Once I finally got my earpiece out and stood over there, it didn't sound like an elephant. It sounded like something in distress. So Dave agrees with me. It was that initial sound of like when you hear elephants in distress, there's that like really weird screaming noise that they make. And that's what we first thought it was. And then there was like choking sound, which we thought was impala, but then taking out the earpiece. And there are hyena now in the area, which seem to be maybe moving in that direction. So I know Ralph will be super excited if hyena are moving into the area for whatever it might be. Carol, animals can come right past. I mean, we had Hosanna, or should I say Bex, who's in FC with Kirsten. They had Hosanna outside their room just the other day. And I know I was watching a segment a little while ago, and Brent had, I think it was Tundi, or it might have even been in the days of Kruger. She came walking right over here past the tent. So there's nothing stopping them from coming here. We're about 100 yards or so from actual camp. We are outside of the perimeter. We are outside of the safety net of camp, but animals see a structure like this as a barrier, as a boundary, and perfectly safe in a tent like this. I've lived in tents like this all over southern Africa, and I've even had a buffalo fall asleep once on the side of a tent I was sleeping in. And as he lay down, he started snoring. I knew that snoring was going to go on for a little while, so I gave him a little bit of a kick, and he moved off, and I won the battle that day. But I wouldn't advise kicking buffalo too often if you don't have to, rather avoid it. But he was quite an interesting buffalo who liked to live right inside the camp, and those guys can be quite dangerous because they kind of lose their fear of humans. We don't have too many buffalo hanging around, but those Duggar boys that started off as a group of like maybe 10 or 15 slowly get dwindled down to 2 or 3 because of lions, and then sometimes you just get that one guy who hangs around, and He moves for no one, and he ends up getting very comfortable living inside a camp. I had that in a trails camp up in northern Kruger, and he was aptly named Rupert. So, very nice name for a buffalo. He was a very grumpy chap, but yeah, we got to see buffalo every day, which was marvelous. So, I think we're going to go for a little wander outside and see if there's anything that we can find that is more interesting than the water. I might catch some soil samples, and I did see a spider earlier. But let's go over to Ralph and see how much progress he's made into the area with the noises.
Thanks, Steve. And well, I have made a little bit of progress now. We're circling, we're getting a little bit closer to him, and we just had two hyenas coming up the road towards us, quite flustered. They were running along a little bit, and they disappeared off into the thick stuff, so we didn't follow them because we want to see the source of what's going on here. They weren't calling, so they weren't the ones that Steve has heard, but that must be now other hyena. So there's a few hyena in the area, which always makes me very excited, as you all know. And if you didn't know that, well, you do know now. Hyena, one of my favorite things in the world. And if there is something going on with the hyenas, well, I am very excited that we maybe catch up with them. But as I say, I want to get to the source of things. They were either being chased by something, or they were on their way to something, or they were, you know, tails up and jogging along the road on that typical hyena-like trot. And so I want to come and see what is going on that Steve has picked up and what these hyena have been running around about. So that's what we're after at the moment. I'm heading slowly towards quarantine, where it's a little bit more open, and maybe we'll be able to pick up a little bit over on that side. I think that's a little bit more the area where Steve would be hearing them from, because I've heard nothing a little bit further away here where we've been circling around. And these hyenas are so incredible how large distances they can cover in such a short amount of time. You don't think they're very fast at all, but with that trot, they just continue with that, and they do move and they cover some ground. I wonder what it's all about. Always exciting when there's activity, and nice, as I said, with this kind of weather, well, we can definitely expect to see predators out a little bit later than usual. Nancy, a hyena, it's quite deceptive, really, because a big hyena, they are rather large. When you look at them just you know, from the vehicle, it doesn't seem like they're big at all, but they probably take me up to about my waist. So they are rather large animals, and I'm in the region of 6'3", so I'm not very small. I'm not massive, but that's a big-sized animal. And it's when you start to see them next to other animals that you actually realize the size, especially a big female. They can be very big. And obviously, remember, the females are the larger of the two, with the male and female, with hyena, which is quite special amongst the mammals. And I'm just working in an area that I haven't been on now. I'm going to head towards quarantine, and then I'm going to head back towards where I last saw those hyena now. But so then I would have covered the entire area. Otherwise, I'm just going to be circling back and driving on the exact same road I've just driven on. So we're just really doing our best. I'm not sure exactly which direction he heard the noises, so we're just working it all. Catbrag, there are three types of hyena. You get the striped hyena, which is the most rare of the lot. I've never seen a striped hyena. And then you get the brown hyena, and you also then get the spotted hyena. So those are the three that we get. So three of them. But the striped, as I say, quite rare, and I've never seen one. Aha. Aha, got a little bit of intel from Rebecca and FC that Steve heard it sort of where the braai site is. So I'm going to be heading exactly in that direction now, but we're keeping our eyes and ears open, and we're looking for any signs of what Steve is talking about. Whoopsie, I'm just dropping my map on the floor. Let's go. I think this road might lead us around there. Yeah, Senzo says yes. I'm still reminding myself of all of the roads. I'm familiar with them, but I don't know them all to an exact science. Not just yet. I got to the point where I was understanding all the roads in the Masai Mara after 3 months, and then I've come back here. So, you know, lots of changes, and you've got to remember all the little roads. It's only 1,000 hectare traverse that we do have, so it's not as if you can get yourself lost. It's just to know the small little roads and where you would generally find animals, and the routes and that the leopards take and where they like to frequent. But okay, while I try and catch up on this on these signs that Steve has given us, let's head you on back to Steve himself, and I think he's got something very interesting under the microscope.
Diamonds and gems, millions and millions of them. I am the wealthiest man in the world. I've just taken a little sample of soil off of the ground directly outside of the tent. This is a very granitic type of soil, and you can see the dominance of quartz crystals in there as they weathered down from the original granite rock. The harder quartz crystals are what remain of just this beautiful little bit of sand, and the particles you can see are very, very coarse. They're quite large. You'd think they are diamond-y type of things, very, very large, and are very easy for moisture to pass through. That's why granite soils are, we call them sandy soils, and sand essentially is, well, this sand is made up of lots of large crystals and very porous. So any moisture that lands on this just sort of drains through, and all the small clay particles you might find in there get washed through a very sort of large sieve. And it's why these granitic soils don't hold moisture. There is no small amount of clay in there. And my next sample I'll go and get, I'll try to find some clay and see if we can show you the differences in the grain size. But I thought this was quite marvelous, just taking it, putting it underneath. Okay, well, it seems like Ralph has found an animal, not the one I think he's looking for, but let's go over to him with his Impala.
That's absolutely right, Steve. Well, I've found this group of Impala here, this nice breeding herd here, with a wonderful male with beautiful horns. He's obviously done himself a very good job of securing himself lots of females here. And so I thought we'd just stop, listen, and hear if we can pick up what Steve was talking about, because we're almost in that area, and it's always good to stop and watch Impala, because they're the ones, if they're very skittish. And sorry about that pole, that's obviously just our roof because of the rain that's around, and it's unavoidable for us needing to protect our expensive camera equipment in the back. But so all these females here, they have been looking slightly skittish, every now and then jumping around. So, shame. I mean, an Impala, the life of an Impala is you're persecuted day and night, and you still need to remember to drink water and eat grass and go about your daily business, but at the same time watching over your shoulder all the time, because everything wants to eat you. So it is quite a sad existence, really. It's a little bit like a sardine in the ocean, always getting chased by everything. But these looking quite happy in this early morning cool temperature. And as I say, I'm still not hearing what Steve was talking about, but it might all be over already in terms of if it was a predator catching something. So we're still going to circle around and see if we can pick up And there's hyena now calling up front. Straight in front of us, down the road, there's hyena calling. So I think we need to hot-foot it down there. It was nice just to stop with these guys. Let's head on down. I want to go catch up with these hyena. Sorry, ladies. Okay, so while I just get through this Impala roadblock, well, there we go, it's opened up for us, but while I just slowly make my way down to where these hyena are calling, let's head you back to Steve, who's got something quite similar, but very interesting under the microscope.
Yes, I have. I've gone and found a more sort of darker soil, sort of more an accumulation of clay, and if you look at it, you can still see there's some crystals in there. They're much smaller and much finer. But you can also notice how wet, how moist the soil is. And that's because of the clay particles in there that actually adhere to the water, or the water adheres to them. And you can see much different sort of composition. So any moisture that falls on this is the stuff that we walk around and slip and slide in. And it gets very muddy on your shoes. But looking under the microscope, you can still see it's still made up of large particles and then lots of small particles as well. And that's what enables the water to stay there and not to drain through as easily as in that sandy soil that we saw before. But a lot of it can derive from the same rock type, but the smaller particles, as we see here, get washed down through the sort of system. Samsung, you want to know how many biomes are there in the world, and interestingly enough, I could tell you what I know from my head. I did a bit of a Google search as well, and they give some interesting different ones there. There's a bit of a debate. Some people say 5, some people say 10. Well, what I do know for a fact is in South Africa, we've got all of the biomes, or 9 of the biomes in the world, and that is fynbos, Nama Karoo, succulent Karoo, savanna, grassland, thicket, Indian Ocean tropical belt, grassland, did I say grassland? Forest, desert, succulent, yeah, that's it. So I could draw it quickly for you on the board and give you a little indication, because you've also got a bit of a weather map going on over here, and maybe we should do the weather map first. We do the weather map first, and then I'm going to draw you a little biomes. Which one was it, Davey? Did you have that one? Have a look at what is going on in South Africa or in Africa at the moment. And this is very, very interesting, because what you have coming in from these currents are circling. This is sort of cyclone type of weather that's happening over here on the east, which is causing us, we're over here somewhere. Oh, we're on the dot. So look at the rainfall and the moisture gradient that's coming in over here. And look what's happening in Cape Town. There's a huge spin-off. This is Cape Town over here. There's a huge spin-off of moisture, but it's staying in or offshore. And that's why Cape Town is having such difficulty with rain. There's no rain. All the moisture is happening offshore in the Cape because of this precious cell over here. And it's all moving around and up onto the east where we are, and that's why we are seeing this marvelous amount of moisture at the moment. So if I draw a map for you shortly, I will just tell you that this is the east side, that's the west side, and because of the moisture and because of the summer and winter gradients when it comes to moisture, that is why we have the biomes that we do. So if you are interested and would like to bear with me for a moment, unless Ralph has found, where is my chalk? Unless Ralph has found going to stick with me, unless Ralph has found a lovely dying animal. Okay, so bear with me with my amazing drawing of South Africa, and this is something that I taught my students, and it's very easy to remember because we get summer and winter rainfall. Okay, so here is the east, yes, and here is the west. Now down here this is actually a very small drawing. I could probably do this a little bit bigger. My humble apologies. Let's do that. This is South Africa, folks. Very, very cool drawing. Obviously, I'm missing a little bit of a coastline. But what we have here is, we call this summer rainfall in the east and winter rainfall in the west. And over here we've got the fynbos. Over here, kind of goes to about over there. And then there is a mountain range that runs across here. Okay, so here we have got winter rainfall before this mountain range, and this is what we call fynbos. And so water in the winter, the tropical cell moves up, and you get rainfall hitting fynbos in the winter months. And because of the mountain range, it all falls on this side of the mountain, and that actually gives quite a high rainfall in the winter, not in the summer. Very, very dry in the summer. And then just on the other side of this mountain, we get what we call the succulent karoo. And succulents, as you can imagine, are succulents, and they get moisture once a year, twice a year, but very low amounts of moisture. But that is winter rainfall. Okay, then you get another mountain range over there, and this mountain range kind of goes all the way around. And then inside here we get what we call the Nama karoo. Well, I'm going to keep drawing my map, and it seems like Taylor has finally found an animal we've been looking for. Let's go to her and her zebra.
Can you believe it? Because, well, zebra are hard to come by these days. We will have to reposition in a minute because they are moving around. But they're just going behind us. They're so sneaky. They just did a little loopsie into Torchwood. And there the rest of them are. It's quite a nice herd of zebra too. A couple of youngsters, well, 2 youngsters in the herd that look to be coming up to about a year old now. And then the stallion is coming in, the last one. He's making sure everybody's okay. Just herding them from behind. And remember, we do have our rain roofs on at the moment, so you will see a black pole every now and then. Shall we reposition quickly? Let's do that. It's going to be quite a cool pic. Oh, hello. Thank you for joining us, Rusty. Kim, I think it's this time of the year that I seem to be a zebra magnet. It's quite nice, in fact. Just going to read leopard track. VM has spotted leopard tracks, but I don't see them on this side, VM. On the left. Okay, I'm not going to drive over them then. I'm going to try and do this. We'll have a look at them in a minute. We'll quickly get a view of... Oh, there, I see them. Of the zebra running down the road, and then we'll draw our attention to the leopard tracks. Thank you, VM. Well spotted. I shall get out of the car and have a little look. Not very impressed with us this morning, though. Wasn't that just a beautiful view? Now, this, to me, is the Lowveld. These beautiful, almost red, sandy roads with marula trees lining the roads, and then, of course, now the tall grass. Rebecca in Final Control says it looks like they're on their way to school. Perhaps. I think they're a little bit late. I don't know. No, they're about time. Maybe they're about to hit traffic when they get to Gowrie Main. They're not very far. I don't know if this is the same herd of zebra that we saw the other morning. I can't actually remember. They're showing the same tendencies with regards to the fact that they're moving so quickly. And zebra aren't sticking around. They're not staying in one spot at the moment. They're moving about, but that's really, really cool to see all those bums just walking down the road, swishing their tails. There are lots of little biting midges at the moment. Go away, spider. There's a little spider crawling towards me, but I blew it away. And if they carry on in this direction, it's not going to be long before they do get down towards Gowrie Main. Maybe they're going to go to Chitwa, so we could still potentially see them this afternoon. Now, I want to have a look at these, try and have a look at these leopard tracks that VM has seen. Just trying to find these tracks. It's over here. But where do they? Because they're not anywhere else. So where did they come from? Did they come out here? We're quickly just gonna check. Russin, there kind of is a structure. It depends. If a herd of zebra is going to water, normally the stallion jumps up in front in order to offer protection and to just sort of scout out the area to have a look around. It takes them ages to get down to sort of water. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you these tracks. They're almost invisible, but they're going back that way. So we'll try and follow them. And basically, now what we've seen as well is when zebra walk too, Often the zebra is just up from the rear, not necessarily leading the herd in front to whatever direction they're going to, but often just pushing the mares from behind. So these are female leopard tracks. There's 2 sets here of tracks. One looking like it was rained on. This other set over here, a little bit more sort of clean and not so many rain droplets on them, but both going down this way. So very, very faint though, very, very difficult to see also in this light, not particularly great. Well spotted, Vim. We'll have to have a little scratch around. He does only have leopard eyes, that's true. We will have a scratch. I'm just trying to think which junction we're going to come up to. Mamba. We go to Mamba and see if we can see any more tracks. Now the zebra are now walking over all the tracks as well. I think I've driven over a whole lot of them too. I don't know, it's the same leopard or 2 different females, or maybe it is Thandi and Tlalamba that were walking around here. The tracks on the right didn't look massive, and I suppose Tlalamba is growing, and we must remember that her feet are going to grow with her. Right. Okay, we're going to keep scratching around here and see if we can pick up anything more on the footprints in the sand. But off we go to Rolf, who's also got a mystery of his own, but only his is sounds.
Yep, we are on the search, and we've pretty much given up on those hyena. I did a real search around there, and I haven't come up with anything. So I'm just broadening that search a little bit, and that might include going down towards the Mlolwati, and we'll see what else we can find, because we can only search around those animals for so long, and eventually we need to sort of move on a little bit. So that's what we've decided to do between myself and Senzo, because there wasn't a lot of further signs there after what Steve had heard. So we did hear the hyena, but they were just calling, they were whooping, doing the old whoop. And it's quite interesting to note that, I've done a little bit of research, and if you look into it, it's actually one of the most efficient ways of throwing your voice over a large distance. Now, if you also look at sirens of whether it be fire brigade, ambulance, I think humans have picked up that is a good way, or that particular tone and sound leads to that going over a long distance, because if you hear those sirens, it's also a woo, 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 very similar to the whoop, and the way that the hyena sort of projects his head as well as he does it. Very interesting. It's almost bouncing it on the road or on the surface of the ground, and that wave's sort of making it travel very far. Because even there we heard it sounded very close, and that hyena I don't think was very close at all. Sam, you want to know around relatives of hyena and what is the closest there? Well, they're actually closely, not closely, but the closest relative is to the cats. And the furthest being, they're in between the sort of cats and dogs, but the closest being to that of the cats. So that's quite interesting. But they're Hyenidae family on their own. They're not a canid or a felid. So they're right in the middle, but closer to the cats, and that's why we call their little uns cubs rather than pups. So because they're closer to the cats. So that's very interesting as well. Lot of hyena activity. I'm seeing tracks all over the place. But we've seen a couple of them this morning, and as I say, now we've heard them. And all sorts going on. But I'm heading now down a little bit further away towards Treehouse Dam. We've sort of worked this central area quite hard. So I think we need to continue on now a little bit and try to find ourselves a little bit of something that we can sit and enjoy. And speaking of which, there was just an Impala bull, a youngster that's just popped across the road. Let's see if we can get a closer view on him. But he's gone into the thick stuff, just like Nyala like to do. We'll see if we can see him through there. Oh, there we go. Senzo, I don't know if you can get a nice view there. It's a nice young male with some younger females there as well. There we are. See how he's starting to change into that darker color. That's almost the watershed moment. You see his nice horns? And he's going that darker shade of grey brown, grey black, rather than that fawny color of the females. But there we are, as Nyala do, as their real where they like to live, in the thickets, and that's where they've headed off. So nice little stop, but very brief. All right, so as I continue on my little search and working on the roads and so on, that's something quite similar to what Steve's doing. But he's drawing a little map, I think.
I am indeed drawing a map, and why not? The teacher in me cannot help himself. So I've drawn a map now, folks, and if it's confusing, I do apologize. And obviously it's not to scale, and it's not 100% accurate, but this is the general idea of how the biomes work in South Africa, and it's got a lot to do with the rainfall, the altitude, and the time of year that falls. Okay, so we're going to start down in the winter of the Cape, and here we have the fynbos, and what happens is that the moisture in the summer, there's a gradient, there's a sort of the pressure cells are very low down in the ocean, and the rain falls in the ocean. You get no rainfall in the fynbos biome in the summer months. So these plants have evolved to be in very dry, hot conditions in the summer, and then when the winter comes, the Cape is a very Mediterranean climate, and so it gets winter rainfall and a relatively high rainfall, and that's because of the mountain range over here. So the moisture from the ocean comes through, it hits the mountain and falls down on this side. Goes through, falls down on this side, and only a little bit of it gets over that mountain and into the succulent Karoo, which only these two, the succulent Karoo and the fynbos, are in fact winter rainfall biomes. The rest of them are summer. Okay, apart from the fact that forest, which we have over here, is right in the middle. You see I've drawn a line in the middle. Down here is a place called Cape Point, where the two oceans meet, and you get this amazing rainfall gradient down here in the southern Cape that comes in and it falls in the forest, and the forest is very high rainfall, and it's pretty much all year, with peaks in sort of April and then September, but it pretty much falls all the time. And once again, that's got to do with the mountains. The moisture coming in from the ocean hits the mountains and falls down here, and so you get very, very wet forest. There's more forest up here on the escarpment. This is the Drakensberg mountain here, my very nice dragon's back drawing, and you get some forest over there as well. But forest has disappeared to a huge extent because of overutilization. Boats were built many, many years ago, but that's for another time. And then further east, we get lower rainfall. We get lower rainfall over here, and this is what we call the thicket biome. The thicket biome used to be known as the pseudo-savanna. They used to think it was a savanna, but there's so many different types, and there's very succulent-y, there's different types, there's wet and there's dry thicket, but it's very thorny, very spiny, lots of euphorbias, lots of speckboom, and that classified the thicket biome, which is over there. Very interesting, Eastern Cape area. And as we go up, we get the Indian Ocean coastal belt, which is very humid. It's a relatively medium to high sort of summer rainfall, but it is very, very nice up here. The water's warm. We've got the Mozambican current that is coming down the coast over here, and that brings lots and lots of moisture. The warm water, lots of evaporation. You get lots of moisture coming in here all the time, and the Indian Ocean coastal belt is a very humid place, very warm place to live, and a lot of the moisture that goes inland hits the be 1,000 mils most in this area. If you got more rainfall, it would become forest. So low rainfall and lack of frost. There's some frost, but lack of frost gives us the savanna biome. We're quite low down, we're not very high, so altitude doesn't play a part. Where you see all those little spots there, very small little ones. Natural, yes, birds will eat spiders. It really depends on the type of spider, and some spiders have got very, very brightly colored sort of appendages or bodies in the case of this one, and it's quite often that a bird will probably leave something alone that's got those brightly colored sort of aposematic colorations to them, indicating that they're poisonous in a way. I'm not 100% sure if the spider is poisonous to eat. But birds will definitely eat spiders, but probably one of the biggest killer of spiders is other spiders. Okay, well, looking at a different type of breeding system here, let's go back over to Ralph and see if his hyena is indeed digging a den site.
Yes, everyone, I've just tried to reposition a little bit, just as we'd like to be able to see this female a little bit better. She hasn't, and there's her face there, sorry for the branches. I'm just going to move slightly forward, Senzo, just to get a slightly better view there without those branches. How's that? Let's see. That might be better. There we go. A little bit better. It's not great, but okay. So there's lots of activity around this termite mound. She's been doing lots of digging, so I'm getting my hopes up that she's going to be staying in this area, and who knows, maybe starting a little bit of a den site, if it's not already one. So I've marked the spot, and I will be returning here. For the moment, activity going down, but you never know, there might be another couple of hyena that pitch up, as I say, very cool still. So, and there were lots of hyena out and about, and maybe this is where they're all coming from. Lots of tracks on the road. Romit, thanks for your question. And generally, hyena only have one den site. They can move it, but if they den, they'll stay in one spot. And that's generally the more or less a central zone in their territory. So they do move it, however, because they're not very clean animals, and the little cubs can defecate and urinate inside the actual den itself. They also do bring carcasses back, especially the females when they've been out hunting. They will return and bring some meat for the youngsters, and so you'll end up having all sorts, decomposing meat and bones and defecation, urination. It all adds up to be very unhygienic within the den site itself. So very often they'll leave the den site, just move a short distance away. And when I say short distance for a hyena can be anything up to 5 kilometers. So they can move that, go to a new den site, and then obviously that's a little bit cleaner. And in the meantime, that decomposition continues in the old den site, and they could return to that after a period of time as well. So they can shift between sites too. We found in the Masai Mara with that northern clan that they had shifted their den site literally 100 meters, but it all depends on suitable denning sites. There they had a porcupine warren that they were using, and then they moved on to sort of another porcupine or aardvark burrow, and there was all sorts within the same similar area. But I think here they would have to, they seem to generally be using these big termite mounds where the aardvark have burrowed into the side, and then they do continue the excavation a little bit. Dale, thanks for your question. If she if she is establishing a den here, I would say that it's possibly one of the very high-ranking females, or the matriarch, because it's mostly the high rankers or the matriarch in particular that will choose a denning site, and then yes, obviously the rest of the minions would follow her to where the den site is. So I'm hoping that we have now identified a matriarch, and if so, this is then going to be a very interesting site for us. But as I say, I'm just getting my hopes up. It doesn't mean that is exactly what has happened here. We'll just have to keep watching and waiting and see what happens. But from one matriarch to another, let's head on over to Taylor and see how she's doing.
Oh, well, thank you. I quite like that comment. So, we are still driving around. Tundi, goodness, that leopard, sure, she'll give you grey hairs. She's been going up and down, up and down. So as I said, we had her and Tlalamba's tracks. I think they went into Torchwood at some point, and she's dropped the cub, and then she was moving up and down Cheetah Cut Line, and then VM also saw some male leopard tracks that were coming this way, but we couldn't see. They didn't go out on the road behind us at Quarry Pan, so I'm just going down Drakensberg North to have a quick little squiz around here. So there could potentially be a male leopard on the property too. Who? I don't really know. Excuse me. Sneezes all day long. Thank you, everybody in Final Control, for saying bless you, and thank you for all the viewers who have also said bless you. There's only one sneeze, so you don't need to say it again. Also, I feel like a person is going to sneeze 17 times in a row, they only get one bless you. That's it. So I don't really know what's going on at the moment. It's difficult because of all the rain that we have had. A lot of the tracks are quite washed away, so there's definitely some action going on last night around here, which is to be expected. As we know, when there's lightning and thunder and big storms, well, the animals, and particularly the leopards and lions and anything else that's doing hunting, does have an advantage. So they've been quite busy, but now I just wish they would leave us fresh tracks so we can actually see what's going on. So we're really just circling around, stopping and looking at things that want to be seen. At the moment there's not much. I'm trying to find a bird for all of you now. I wonder what the first bird we're going to see is. It's gone. It was a turtle dove. We'll find another one. Oh, Saskia, you said you said that if you sneeze it means somebody's thinking of you. Goodness gracious, well, I must be thought about a lot then, because yesterday I sneezed about 100 times. I don't know though. I feel like it may just be my allergies. Lots of allergies at the moment, or at least the dust has settled now after the rain, so they shouldn't be too bad. But there are a few people sneezing around at the moment. Maybe there's a little cold or something going about. Okay, I'm going to go with our next bird being a hornbill. What do you think, VM? Go-away bird. Why, have you seen one? No. Okay, VM's gone with a go-away bird. Let's see which one we're going to find you first. I like this. Watch, it won't be a bird now, you know. Steenbok. There it is. Please come out, little Steenbok. It's hiding. Oh, no, man. There, it's just running. Ach, no, man is a great South African saying as well, if you've never heard it before. Basically, it means... How do you describe it? Oh, no, man, but I was... Oh, there you are. Oh, drats, says Rebecca, is a good way to describe it. Right, on that happy note, let's go to Steve and see how he would describe Ach, no, man.